I'm presenting for Chapter 6. So, one of the things that I focused on in my lesson plan and in my summary to use in my future classroom was response to intervention. Um, I knew a little bit about it beforehand, but I learned in the textbook and through some research it's a specific system meant to help students catch up to the level that they need to be at before they get to the point of failing tests. So you don't want to figure out that they need help after they take a test and after they fail it. Um, you want to be giving them help up until the point that they take a test, and then they'll do better. And this is for struggling and gifted students. For tier one, that's the majority of students, and that's just core instruction, straightforward. That's what all students get. Tier two is a lot smaller, 5 to 10% of students who need supplemental instruction and more frequent instructional opportunities. Maybe like more one on ones with the teacher or more pulling aside in small group. Just giving them more instruction to help them. And then tier three is the absolute smallest, 1 to 5%. And this is the most intensive of them. This is for students who really, really need help, and they may even be referred to for special education evaluation and services if they get to this tier. Another one that we focused on was using formative assessment and anecdotal notes. I actually do this a lot in my lesson plans. Doing formative assessment, I like doing formative assessments. They're not graded, and they can be a very quick way of assessing students' understanding, especially if you do it all throughout a lesson. And then I'd also have to take anecdotal notes to do that. I like taking anecdotal notes all throughout the lesson, or as much as I can, right after a lesson or whatever, to help me remember everything that I saw and everything that the students kind of did, whether behaviorally, what they did with their work, what they did with their partners or with the class, how they interacted, and things like that. And of course, whenever they're used together, they ensure that you're targeting what students are struggling with or even what they're doing well with. Again, it's not just for struggling students, it's for students who are showing mastery of the content. Because you also want to help them. You want to give them more challenging content because they can handle it. You want to elevate them to the next level. The types of formative assessment I usually use are like thumbs up, thumbs down. That's really quick. You can even give them like little sticks, red, yellow, green sticks. Red means, whoa, stop, we need to go over it again. Yellow is, I'm kind of unsure. Maybe you should check on me during our activity. And then green is like, good to go. I also like using exit tickets. I feel like sometimes students might not want to, especially like as they get into the older grades, or even the younger ones, I guess, because they'll kind of just do what the other people do. I get worried that that's what they'll do, that they'll just put a thumbs up just because everybody else is, or because they don't want to let the class know that they don't really understand. So I like doing exit tickets because it's personal to the student, it's individual. Nobody sees it but the student and the teacher. Um, and you can kind of better assess what they know, what they don't know, especially if it's like the exit ticket on the screen is just things I learned today, things I found interesting, and then any questions they might have. But even if you put like a specific question or problem about the content and then have them solve it, and then kind of have them also do like, what did I understand? What do I still need help with? Um, it can really help the teacher to get to know the student's thought process and what they're struggling with, what they're doing okay with, and what needs to be targeted. And that includes for the whole class too. You take that information for all the individual students and then for the whole class, and then kind of revise your lessons according to that. Another one was explicit strategy instruction. I actually didn't have a defined term for this before I read the textbook, but it's highly structured, teacher-led instruction where the teacher not only models the content for the students, but also models like the decision making process. Um, so the teacher will write out on the board, do whatever, like if it's a math problem or something, the teacher will model for the students. And as they model, they'll be saying out loud, like, what strategy they're doing, why they're doing that, or why it's more helpful than a different strategy, or I use this strategy, but maybe it's not working so well. What other strategy could I use, or what strategy would be quicker? Things like that. Because it often helps students understand the meaning of what they're learning, and then they can make connections between new and prior knowledge. This is especially helpful for math, I think, because everything in math kind of links, but it can be used for, I mean, any subject. Another one that I thought was really interesting was think alouds. When a teacher models a task while also sharing their thought process. Um, and then these kind of can begin with students' thoughts. So the teacher can ask a question, a student will answer, and then even if it's incorrect, the teacher will expand on that. Um, Kind of ask more questions, like leading questions, questions that will push the class into a different direction, and then the class can kind of discuss like what was going on there. And this is a good time to ask higher order thinking questions as well, um, because of the class discussion, because you're seeing reasoning behind actions and strategies. Another one was teaching and assessing students with learning disabilities. Um, I feel like I kind of think about this kind of on the back burner when I'm making lesson plans, um, but don't really like bring it to the front and be like, what can I specifically do to teach and assess students with learning disabilities? So one of the things that they mentioned in the books was removing competitive stimuli, um, to avoid distracting the students, or maybe like sensory overload. You don't want them to get overloaded with anything that's around you. You want them to focus on you and what you're doing. You also want to avoid confusion when you say directions. You want to speak carefully and say the directions very clearly. You don't want to kind of say the directions in a blasé kind of way, and then the students are like, what do you mean by that?" Um, Another thing I think is super important, because I see this even in, like, I work at a daycare, is creating seamless transitions, because I know for a fact that whenever transitions are kind of disrupted, or when there's too much wait time between transitions, that's when a lot of like kind of behavior stuff starts, and also maybe confusion for the students, um, because they're kind of in an empty space where they either don't have anything to do, or they don't know what they're supposed to do because they haven't been given instructions yet for the next part. So creating seamless transitions helps students kind of keep on track, with what we're doing, what we're supposed to be doing, what we're learning, you know. Um, Also, kind of having everyone facing the teacher, and the teacher facing the students. You don't really want anyone to have their back to you at any point in time. Um, and then you also shouldn't have your back to the students. They should be able to see your face. You should be like, a lot of engagement happens like just through kind of facial expressions, and you can also do assessing through just watching the students, like kind of watching the students as you talk. Um, Plus, you just kind of need to see students in general. And then utilizing response to intervention is especially good for students with maybe learning difficulties. And then utilizing progress monitoring. This is another thing that was always kind of on the back burner for me, and I never was like pushing it to the forward, pushing it to the front. Um, but this is used to assess students' academic performance, quantify their improvement towards goals, and determine how they are responding to instruction. And of course, this is important because this is what tells you, is my instruction working? Is my response to intervention working? Are students learning what they need to know? How are they doing with it? Um, so, of course, that's very important. And you want to continuously monitor their progress so that they never fall behind or they never get kind of left behind. And then everything kind of snowballs. They get left behind and left behind. And then, of course, they'll end up failing tests and things like that, which you don't want them to do. And then that's just resources. One of them's the textbook. We had a video for formative assessment, explicit instruction, where I got some progress monitoring information, and then a bit more information. Oh, this one's the textbook. Yeah. And I think that is all. Thank you.